Welcome to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation. It is Monday night all over again, and my name is Donna Greatbanks. I am your host. Our guest tonight is the author of I Would Scream If I Could Get This Dick Out of My Mouth. Thank you, F.R.E.S.H, for being on Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation. Miss F.R.E.S.H, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation is brought to you by Eyeless Diamonds, LLC, Ladero Press, Milton McCulloch, a Dante production, and the Fresh Book Festival, which will be held in the beautiful city of Daytona Beach, February 23, 24, 25, in the year of 2023. Please come join us. It is a wonderful event, and it's open to all genres. If you have any questions for F.R.E.S.H, please leave them in the chat room. We may have time for questions at the end of the show. And this show is being recorded. Good evening, F.R.E.S.H. Please take a moment and give our audience a brief background.
Okay, well, again, my name is F.R.E.S.H. I'm originally from the North, and I transplanted about 25 years ago to Florida. I am a mom of an adult son, and I also am a business consultant and developer. I worked a little over 30 years in the financial industry, and I also worked in government. This book is my debut book. It's not my own book that will be coming out. And I'm an education specialist. And I enjoy doing my community outreach, more specifically with children and working with people who struggle with various aspects of making that next move, that next turn, and working with them both personally and from a business side. Because when I deal with my business clients, and most of them have personal issues that come into their businesses. So we have to be able to incorporate the whole person. There's no such thing as compartmentalizing yourself.
It has to be holistic. Yeah.
Right? We show up. That's how we show up, and we show up with some heavy burdens. Sometimes we show up in different stages. So that's who I am, and I'm happy to be here.
And I thank you for coming on at such short notice. The young lady that I had scheduled was a breast cancer survivor, and she was not feeling well. So that's not something that you want to do on camera. And so I thank you very, very much. I was trying to end the month with breast cancer, but you're jumping right in really made a difference. So thank you. I want to talk about, I got more than one email on the dick word, right? And I tried to explain to everybody that that was just a metaphor for so many other things that you're going to talk about in your book, and to not let it scare them from reading it, right? And then I said, if you can read my book, you can read this book. So I don't know what the problem
that's the funny thing about it. That's the funny thing about it. When we hear the word dick, we instantly go to just one definition, right?
Right.
But the nickname for Richard is what?
Dick.
All right. And Shakespeare called King Richard III the devil.
Right.
So if I'm going to talk about it from a Shakespearean standpoint, which is really my play on the word, is that's the word dick. But it is really more about Machiavellian rulers.
That is the word that I did not want to say. So I took it out of the script because I said I'm going to mess it up. So tell us what.
So we know about Machiavellian rulers, right? We know about it. But the Bible is very clear in Ephesians 6:12, right? It says, and I don't, want to, insult anyone because many people know the scripture, but it says that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And we keep talking about from a Christian, because this is where I'm coming from. I come from a Western worldview, and as a Christian, I'm a believer. So this is my basis. And so we talk a lot about the goodness of the Lord and everything, but we're putting on the full armor of God because we're dealing with wickedness in this world. And sometimes I think that we don't even recognize when we're dealing with wickedness, right? So the word dick may be distasteful, but I would say the things that we're going through right now is very distasteful, where I got to still fight for civil rights that was supposed to be assured to me back in the 60s. I'm sorry, in 1865. I'm sorry when I was born. I'm sorry when God created me, I had my rights. So how is it that the word can be distasteful, but the lies that have been promulgated to us in our history books and in the Jim Crow South and various other things, how come that's not distasteful?
Right.
How is it we don't know our own truth, our own reality? I would suggest that that's the more distasteful thing about it. But actually, I'm talking about understanding the many things that are going on that seem almost unnoticed to the visible eye. But the reality of it is that something is awry. And I think that right now, since we are on the precipice of something, I don't know whether it's the Civil War again being fought, but we see it in our political, in our religious centers. We see it. We see it rising where it looks like the father of lies has taken over our entire political process. But we're not calling him the father of lies, even though everything that has been spewed is a lie. So why aren't we calling this mountain this mountain? He said we should be able.
What he said, right?
He said we should be able to call it down. So are we? I call it, once you get saved, people get a little more timid. But I call them punk Christians, because this is when you're really supposed to fight.
Right.
I'm just gonna tell it like it is. And so, people like it, they don't like it. But this is exactly what the book is about, is to talk about how is it that we, once we go into these indoctrination centers, they call them public schools, once we go into these indoctrination centers, we believe everything because it's in a book. So you're saying to me, even though my epigenetic and my ancestral history goes further than the United States of America, you're saying that my life and everything that's important in my life actually comes about since enslavement. And I want you to do,
no, I want you to unpack that word, say it again.
Epigenetics.
Unpack it for me.
Okay, so what we have is we have our DNA. And then anytime trauma is experienced, it is on top of our DNA. So they call it, it almost looks like a light switch. So for example, when we saw the murder of George Floyd, it turned something on us. We began to rise up. Something in us was stirred. It wasn't about Mr. Floyd. It was about what our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, what they may have experienced. Though you don't know it, you carry it. And epigenetic trauma is actually carried through your blood cells. It's carried through your DNA. So I don't know my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. I never met him. Chances are you never met him. But I bet you that there's some ways and some things that you do or someone in your family does that people will say, they act just like Uncle so-and-so. Yeah. They talk just like, or on the flip side, you can have two siblings grow up together and you say to the other one, I don't know where they come from. They ain't nothing like me. I don't know, because their epigenetic trauma manifests differently, right? So as a Black woman, this perpetual lie that's been told that, or as a Black man, let's talk about rape and Black men being accused of rape. Let's tell the truth about that. Through history, our Black men have been lynched for looking at, appearing to be, and yet for centuries, the white man has raped the Black woman. But that's the story that they tell. Now, am I supposed to believe your lie, or am I going to look at the history? We got an entire, we got a president, Jefferson, okay? They talked about him and Sally Hemings, and they had a love affair. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know many children having a love affair with the owner. I'm chattel, but we having a love affair. No, that's not a love affair. That's just rape.
In a room that was sealed.
Right? She's sleeping in a closet, you know, but they want to tell us a story that has absolutely nothing to do with the truth. I went to the Legacy Museum in Alabama, and you see all of these souls that were lynched, and some of them were lynched because they irritated a white woman. Irritated. What? So if the word dick is offensive and those lynchings aren't offensive and George Floyd is not offensive and what's happening in our political process is not offensive, then I would say that maybe we need a different metric to measure what is offensive.
Right.
Because I'm offended when you lie to me and tell me that I'm supposed to be subjugated when I'm a queen. I didn't give up my throne. I haven't abdicated. So so your epigenetics is actually something that is turned on when you experience, or it's the trauma that's turned on when you experience something. But the good news is that it is not permanent. It will not alter your DNA. So what we have to do is learn how to not respond in a way that they want you to respond. Notice how they manipulate us with buzzwords. And I'll give you one. How many people were ticked off when they saw MAGA, Make America Great Again?
But that's so
Anybody?
old, and most people don't know that. That's old.
Right? But actually it was Ronald Reagan who said, make America great again. And he did it at the same fair that the 3 civil rights workers came up missing in Mississippi, right? So he was sending a message to what audience? He was letting the Ku Klux Klan know, I'm your president. I believe in states' rights over the federal government, because it was the federal government that was supposedly protecting us. And we can have another
1980
discussion about it.
1980.
Yeah, well, 79 when he did his presidency, so 80, 79. So he was the mega man. And right after he gave his speech, the Ku Klux Klan endorsed him.
Yes, he did.
Now, if I know this, if this is common knowledge to me, and you can go and look it up yourself, if I know this, you're telling me all the mainstream media doesn't know this?
Mainstream media, as long as they're of a certain age, may know it. Other than that,
mainstream media wants to guide your thoughts.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the truth of the matter is, if you're going to start reporting something, start with the origin of it.
Start with the history.
This is appropriate journalism. This is honesty in journalism.
Right.
But they like buzzwords too. You know, you would think that the news media is like a soap opera, because all they want to do is stay tuned, because we got the tea on whatever it is. Well, the media wasn't always our friend. Anytime that you saw something, a person that robbed or what have you, it always said an image. You always knew whether they were Black or white just by the way they reported the story.
Right.
So, you know, all of a sudden the media is our friend. I don't know. The media is the media. It has a perspective just like everyone else. And you have to look beyond the lens or widen the lens in order to get to your truth.
So let's talk about a statement you have, I believe on the back cover, or somewhere in the book. You said, "Do I dare speak of wound colonization, discarded hopes, and incarcerated dreams?"
Yeah.
Unpack that statement for me.
Yeah. Do I dare talk about
Do
that,
I
right?
dare talk about
Do
it?
I
Yeah.
dare talk about that? I have a chapter in the book called No Home for Unwed Fathers, right?
Mhm.
And so we keep talking about unwed mothers, and how they've been sullied, and how, they have a moral decay. There's something wrong with them. But we're not talking about Marys walking around where wasn't nobody impregnating them. I would assume that there was some fathers in the mix of those unwed mothers.
All right.
And so they open up all of these homes, primarily the religious people, the Catholics and what have you. They open up these homes for unwed mothers, and the charity and the government takes care of all of these children. Now, keep in mind, no person of color could go to an unwed home. So we're talking about all Europeans, right? That are going into these unwed homes. So now, fast forward, the government took care of them, charity took care of these unwed mothers and their children. And suddenly, the vision that you have promulgated in our society now is a single Black mother. Well, how did that happen? Because those homes weren't built for single Black mothers, right. They were built for single white mothers. And you had a lot of men, I'm assuming some of them were single, but maybe not all of them were single. So where's their home? Where's their moral decay that they managed to, impregnate women and then abandon them? And suddenly they hold themselves up as the moral compass for procreating and rearing children. Well, you didn't do it after World War II. You weren't doing it then, but now you're the moral majority. How did that happen? Who told you to tell that lie? And how is it that we bought it? Hook, line, and sinker. How did we buy it? And another story. So that's why I say that.
Yeah, we went from those types of homes for them to the foster care system for us.
Correct. Correct. And then what is the foster care system? What we actually is a byproduct of what? Another dick. We call him Tricky Dick. Right. How about Tricky Dick? Anybody want to talk about Tricky Dick?
Nixon,
and his war on drugs, and Ehrlichman. Anybody want to talk about the Tricky Dick one? Because he set out to destroy the Black family with his policies. That's what Tricky Dick did. And he flooded our communities with drugs. He took away any kind of opportunities in terms of financial assistance. And when I talk about financial assistance, I'm just merely saying, can you give jobs to our youth in the summertime? Can you make sure that the schools that are in our community are equal to the schools in other communities?
So, rid of all the STETA programs, all the work programs, he took them all away.
Correct. And then Reagan went ahead, once it got instituted again, Reagan went ahead and took it back again. So that's how we get the Reaganomics. So, when we talk about foster care, you incarcerated our children, our parents at mass, you drugged them out, then you flooded our community with AIDS, then you did crack cocaine. I mean, how many waves of destruction is our community expected to take? And then you continue to blame us for your failed policies. So yeah, I wish I could get this done. I really would scream. Because people,
hallelujah, you scream hallelujah.
Right. And as a matter of fact, that is chapter 13. Right. I can scream and last, right?
Yeah.
But at first we have to be willing to talk honestly and candidly about what really has happened. They use buzzwords right now about defund the police, but the reality of it is we're just talking about reallocating funding back to the community. defund is a soundbite. It sounds good and it's meant to inflame one group over another.
Right.
But the reality is we're just merely saying you allocated money out of our community to make it a policing community. And we're merely saying, put the money back in the community so that children can learn a trade. Everybody's not meant to go to college.
Right.
To make sure that, small businesses get money independent of their credit. And they can't say they can't do it because they did it during COVID and the pandemic.
They sure did.
Everybody got money, right?
Everybody got money.
As I say, everybody got money, right? You didn't need good credit. You didn't need anything. So you can do what you want to do when it serves your interest, but you don't do it to make sure that middle-class America actually makes money and that can be self-sustaining. To this day, according to Forbes, white women make 78 cents on the dollar compared to a white male, but a Black woman still on average makes 60 cents on the dollar. So how is it that we still are 3/5? We're still earning 3/5. How is that? And no one's upset about it. No one seems to be talking about it. So that's the part is being able to point out how smooth this wickedness is.
Oh, it's smooth.
It's smooth. And people don't want to talk about it, but if we don't talk about it, if we stay muted about what's really happening, then they win. And who are they? It's that wicked, the puppet master. He's pulling all the strings. He wants us to believe in otherness, but the truth of the matter is that the more white people are on welfare than Black.
Absolutely.
Just by the sheer numbers, right? But nobody talks about that. You're not saying a word about that. It's always a welfare queen, those dog whistle words. And the truth of the matter is that if we don't talk about it, like Zora said, they'll kill you and say that you enjoyed it, right?
Right. Lest we forget. Right?
That's the truth.
So give us, you gave me a bit of history about the Statue of Liberty. Some I knew, some I didn't know. But give our audience your true history about the statue and how it sits in the New York Harbor.
Well, first of all, her name is Liberty, enlightening the world. She is not the Statue of Liberty. So you see how just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego,
right.
If you change that name, you can change its purpose, right? So she's Liberty, enlightening the world. And she actually came about from an abolitionist, in the abolitionist movement. And it was dreamed up in 18. So 1865 important, right? You free the slaves. We'll disperse with the fact that Lincoln didn't free anybody, because that's yet another story that's being told in our history books that is nowhere near the truth. But so here it is, this liberty enlightening the world. It was a symbol for the ending of enslavement and indentured servitude. So one of the things that people rarely, because the eye is routinely being directed to look up at her torch, but no one is looking at her feet. Just so you can see, there's chains on her feet. There's broken chains on her feet. But no one is looking at her feet. They're not looking at the foundation. You would believe that she was about European immigration, but she is ours. She's actually bronze. And only because of the process where she's in the elements is she green. But this was a beautiful bronze lady that letting you know we're free now. But how many of us who are of African descent claim her as ours? And it was to encourage France to get rid of their monarchy and get rid of their rule. It was just that important. But now you hear it, liberty, liberty, liberty. She's a commercial. She's insurance. But she does not stand for the freedom that she was meant to stand for. And that is because we don't force these issues. We don't say, I'm not going to let you change her purpose for your benefit. I know how she was made, why she was made. She was part of an anti-slavery movement, and we're going to keep her for her original purpose.
I think it got distorted with the words on the statue. Bring us your, I don't know.
Yeah, wait a minute. Here we go. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free.
That says it all. That says it all. But they took that statement and put it towards the Europeans.
Yeah.
Coming to America.
Right.
Right.
And then we see images of it, right? We see all those images, you know, of the poor European coming across and everything. You don't see nothing coming over on, you know, in Alabama or Virginia or anything like that. You don't even see that. But okay.
So it wasn't until later in the evening that I actually knew. Do you have a picture? You have a book right there so we could see it?
Can you see?
F.R.E.S.H. I would scream if I could get this dick out of my mouth. It was published this year, 2020.
It was published in
2021. When? 2020. 2021. So it's actually, there are some segments of it that is a workbook, right? So tell me about the questions that are, the questions are asked by each chapter. Are they asked by your personal presence, or how does that, talk about that.
Every chapter does have questions at the end, and it is to give the reader an opportunity to synthesize what it means to them, you know, what was going on in their lives, how did they come to understand this truth, or how did you learn this history, you know, what school were you in, and how did it feel, you know, to learn that you thought something was fact when it really wasn't fact. You know, how did you feel when you were lied to in your school books? When you find out something different, you know, even the word slave versus enslavement, right? Slave is dehumanizing. Enslavement is the act of the dehumanizer.
Right.
You know, you want to call me the barbarian, you know, the barbarian, the savage, but who enslaved whom? Who raped whom? How am I inhumane when it was done to me, not from me? But if I let you tell the story, you get to tell the story that makes you look like the hero.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Of course not.
I know that.
So in your opinion, how has the Bible in its many forms misinformed people? This is her opinion.
Now, I'm gonna need people who, because I'm not an expert on the Quran or the Torah or anything like that. So
well, those aren't considered Bibles, are they? They're not.
No. It's holy scriptures. Right. They're holy scriptures, right? But I know many of my friends who are of Jewish faith, and they have to learn how to read in Hebrew. I know a lot of friends that are Greek, and they have to learn how to read in Greek. We seem to want to change the version, you know, is English, it can be, we have, you can Google it. The Bible is printed in many languages.
Many forms.
And it has different versions. They got King James, New Living Translation, I mean, you know, every word doesn't mean the same thing. And I'll just say it like this. Okay, now they call it business ethics. Okay, what happened to just ethics? You telling me that you got a different set of ethics at home than you do in your business life, than you do with your friends? No. When we talk about life biblically, we talk about our entire life. Our worship is part of our life. Everything is our life. Now everything is separated. So the Bible is an interpretation. Clearly, it's not a documentary, right? Nobody filmed it at the time it was happening. Right. So these are stories that are passed on. So we got, we talk about Hippocrates. Let's give the Greek Hippocrates a little credit. Right? Okay. And you take the Hippocratic Oath. But 1,000 years before him, we got Imhotep. So how come we're not taking the Imhotep oath? Because he was the father of medicine. Right. So how come we're not taking the Imhotep oath? Well, who wrote the book? So you got to question, when someone is writing and sending you something to distort the truth, they're going to favor their culture, their race. And I think the same is true for for the Bible. We have all of these versions. I have several. I have the Founder's Bible, of which it never talked about 1619. In some of the stuff, it doesn't talk about Pope Alexander IV and the discovery doctrine. There's a lot of stuff missing. And if you miss, is it omission? And if you do an omission, is that not the same as a lie? Yeah. I remember when my mother didn't want to talk to my grandmother, probably because she was getting ready to get fussed at, and I didn't want to lie to my grandmother. So I would just say, I don't see her. Yes, ma'am. When I see her, I will tell her. And then when I hung up the phone and I look and say, call your mother, you're not going to make me a liar. I mean, I just had to close my eyes and say, I don't see her. Because I couldn't say that to my grandma. Mama, she don't want to talk to you right now. Because that's going to get me, in trouble.
Tell her to get on the phone.
Right. He said, I don't care what you want. You better get on this phone.
And right now.
Right. Yeah. I do believe, I have studied theology for quite some time. I read a lot, I don't read just one Bible, but one of my favorites is the Geneva Bible. And aside from many things, but it happens to be the one that, calls a spade, if you will, right? And it calls out some stuff that everybody's been tiptoeing around. And so we need to pay attention to who is writing these Bibles and who stands to gain from this distorted truth. The word says that you are not to take anything away or add anything to it. So every time that you transcribe the Bible and you are changing words, are you not adding and taking away?
When you were putting your book together and having it edited and the cover being done, did any of your editorial professors want to remove certain things from your book?
Actually, I would say that they came to understand as they read it what was being revealed.
Right.
Okay.
They got knowledge. Knowledge. Yeah.
It is not. Yeah. It's not what people think it is. It is deep in scripture and understanding. And you have to have a spirit of discernment to understand these 7 mountains and how the enemy has tried to break us down. And just give you one example of that. Let's talk about Big Pharma or Pharmica, which is a demon, right? It's a demon. We know it is, and yet we call it big pharma now. They got drug stores. It's in your grocery store. Yet another demonic force. But we take manufactured this witchcraft medicine more than we even take the scripture that says that this temple is a living God and we're going to treat it right. No, we're going to eat what we want to do. We're going to eat all these processed foods, this Monsanto genetic modified seeds. We're going to eat all of this. And then we're going to take a bunch of medicine that does nothing but cover up the continual breakdown of this temple that God has already created. We're not going to go and drink chai seed and try to get our glucose levels in line. No, we're going to take some metformin, inject with some insulin. And, we're not going to deal with beets. We're going to start taking hypertension medicine. We are being led down a path of sickness. And we know that is inconsistent with God, right? So but we blindly accept it. So once, at one of my spiritual retreats, I actually put scriptures in a prescription bottle and said, take these, because in fact, I would say that they're more effective. Most doctors will tell you in recovery, the X factor is generally your faith.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. That's the X factor. That's the one thing that you can't get rid of. So you will believe a thing. There are many people who have survived things that the diagnosis you shouldn't have survived. And the only thing that could have possibly done that is a living God. I, of course, had such an experience in my life, but I'm just merely saying that in these 7 mountains, we come to believe things that aren't true. We go to the drugstore. Look at the food that you are eating now. Look at exactly what you're eating now. You don't know what that is anymore. You don't know what you're eating, and you're wondering why your body is responding in the way. I used to be able to eat this. You don't know what this is anymore. Just because they put it in a pretty package and put a label on it and call it chicken, that does not mean that it is not some sort of genetically modified. You have no way of knowing its origin, and yet we are what we eat. So we have all of this dis-ease, right? It's dis-ease in our bodies. So we have to get back to farming, growing our own fruits and vegetables. We have to get back to certain things if we are healed. An example of how wickedness just kind of seeps through and we accept it. We just accept it.
So show us again a copy of your book. Were you able to pick an excerpt for us to read from? Did you have time?
Yes, but I do want to just kind of point out, the word dick is actually a collage of names, okay? So Pope Alexander IV is actually a member of the Borges family, and he's the one that started slavery. We talked about how many people talk about manifest destiny in school. Did you learn manifest destiny? Because I certainly did, where it was the Christian right to go and take over everything. But, that's inconsistent with kenosis, right?
Right.
Jesus said to go and spread the good news. And if they receive it, right, you there, you give a blessing. But if they don't, brush the dust off your feet and keep stepping.
Right.
Where does it say go and take everybody's stuff, enslave them, rob them of their land, their minerals, and enslave them? Where does it say that? That's the Pope. He was like a cancer. So that's how we ended up going to Africa and taking and stealing kings and queens and babies and mothers and sisters and brothers and, doctors and agriculturalists and all of. That's how you ended up stealing and raping and pillaging a people, is because if you consider them other, that demon of otherness, then you take away their humanity. And so you can justify your wickedness. But no, I'm not going to let you get away with it. We won't talk about the discovery doctrine because it was the document, which is in the book, it was the document that spread this evilness throughout the world. And it enslaved our indigenous brothers and sisters. It enslaved us. It enslaved anything that would not bow to their Christendom, which is quite different than Christianity. Quite different.
The dumb makes the difference.
Yeah.
The DOM makes the difference.
I can say a whole lot about Catholicism, but you know, I'm just gonna tell you the truth. I'm not a fan.
Right.
I'm not a fan.
Right.
And so yes, I do have what
who else is in the deck?
Okay, so we have George Washington, Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, Patrick Henry. Give me liberty or give me death. At the time in which how many of us were enslaved? He talking about give me liberty or give me death. Somebody should have gave him death. Let's see here. I got a guy named Tom Green. It's a metaphor for a guy. D.W. Griffith. You remember his movie? You know, Birth of a Nation.
Right.
You know, we've got. Let's see here. Cristobal Colon, which is Christopher Columbus. Rutherford B. Hayes. We've got a lot of pretty good people that you might want to look up and find out exactly who they are. Bull Connor is in there. George Wallace. Eric Erickson, the known child psychologist who considered us anal, sadistic niggers, you know, and that 10 years ago. Psychologists talked about the damage of the Dow test and how it affected our psyche. He still considered us something less than. Okay, so we talk about these things. This is in plain sight. You go to the National Archives and Library of Congress, you can find out a great deal about our history, but not in our history books, not in the history books that I've read and that children are reading today. In Florida, right now, we have a governor that has an anti-woke law. How are you gonna regulate enlightenment? How you gonna regulate enlightenment? If you read something and it's the truth, how can you stop me from awakening? That's a God thing. That's between me and God. No man has dominion over that. So these people who purpose one thing and do completely a different thing. If you don't believe in slavery, then why do we have it for so many years? If you don't believe in it, if these all good men who believe that we are all equal, why is it that women didn't even have rights? And Black men were chattel. How is that possible?
And how is it that we're even still talking about it in 2022, going into 2023?
Right. Why am I still, you know, I'm from, you know, the Michigan and the Detroit area. So Stevie Wonder has a song that says, if you really want to hear our view, you haven't done nothing. I can just hear our grandchildren saying the same thing. We've got to fight like we never fought before for our humanity. And when I say our humanity, I'm speaking of everyone. I'm not speaking separately than my European or my Chinese, or I'm not speaking separately. We are one human race. We have one planet, and we got to figure this thing out. We can't keep pointing in this separatism thing. It's not going to work. It hasn't worked.
And it's not going to work.
Right. So until I see my brothers and sisters as brother and sister, and we can talk about the trauma and the things that have happened in our own clan. And that's the other thing. A lot of people just don't want to accept we used to be slave owners. My great-grandfather lynched a man, set him on fire. Okay? That's a hard thing for anybody. Now, it's hard for me to know that it was my grandfather that you did it to, but you can't take a man's life and not lose your own soul.
Right.
So how are we going to have an opportunity for people to come together and lay that burden down? We got to create that space. We can't stay here. We cannot stay.
I tell everyone who listen, all my non-melanated friends, you better look at your children and your children's children, because the vote that you do today is going to hurt that little boy or girl whose hair looks like mine, that you call your grandchild or your great-grandchild, right?
Absolutely.
Make sure you understand what you're doing.
And teaching them how to have more empathy for one another. I think that's probably the most disservice that things like the lost cause and the lies that we have in our books, I think that's probably the most destructive thing we could have done, is to create people that are separate and unequal in our history books and then in our minds. Because once you believe someone is separate and different than you, then you can move them from your heart. And that's when it becomes real dangerous, because if you don't have a heart for people, then you will find yourself justifying some of the most wicked things. And that's dangerous. That's just dangerous. So once we teach our children to love themselves
first
and then be able to extend it, then it becomes a different conversation. But we can't stay in this separate state. And as a matter of fact, I do have a poem that I would like to read for you guys.
Please go ahead.
If you would like.
Right.
And this came because, you know, people tell me sometimes, and my grandfather used to say it often, he thought that I was mad a lot. Now, I come from domestic violence, and you know, you can't tell your grandparents that your parents just got finished fighting. You can't possibly say that. So you're just quiet. You may be sullen. But obviously he saw something on my face, and I did not know exactly what it was until this poem came to me. So it's titled, "My Pain Looks Just Like Anger," by the daughter of the remembered. If you see me scream and shout and wonder what I'm talking about, I'm the history you tried to blot out, the lies you told, the truth you stole. Your books and laws are rooted in the lost cause. Your implied immunity is systematically murdering my community. Characteristics you possess are cloaked upon my righteousness. My pain looks just like anger. Remember, the demon decries, the lynchings, the massacres, rapes, and nightly terrorist raids. I exclaim, the time has come, the transfer complete. The end of a 400-year reign ends in defeat. Possessions so great are carried away. The ancestors await their expected arrival. This is the reward of generational survival. Covenant kept, redeemed, delivered, and restored. Glory to God, the Holy One, Jesus Christ, Lord. The prophets and Holy Spirit bear witness to our homecoming. Sila?
So tell me, this is a lot, right? So tell me what the driving force was for you. This is an extensive piece of literature. It took time.
It took, you know, it's been a series of
journey. It's been a journey.
Events. Yeah, it's been a journey. But I'll tell you something. When I went to school, it was governed by Catholic doctrine. It was a public school, but it was still governed by Catholic doctrine. And I was 3 when I went to school. My mother had done a good job teaching me my letters and everything. And I'm left-handed. And the teacher used to hit me so much on my left hand for using it that I had an open wound. At some point, grades come out. I am doing poorly in penmanship. And my mother asked me, how did this happen? Now I got a claw in her lap and whisper in her ear because I don't know what happens to little children once they're discovered to have this secret. Because my teacher told me that I had the sign of the devil because I was left-handed. And she was beating my left hand. I still have a scar on my knuckle because I'm left-handed. So I told my mother this, and my mother, pulled me from her bosom and looked at me. And by this time, I'm crying because what will she do? This educated person has identified me as something evil. And I don't know, do you get rid of children like me? And she went up to the school and asked the teacher. The teacher confirmed it. And my mother very quickly said, if you hit my child again, you're going to see Jesus a lot sooner than you think. So here it is. I knew that school was not the place for me, but I had to navigate it. And what I discovered is that the more I became educated, the less I began to see me. I didn't see me in Dick and Jane. I didn't see me in anything. It was as though I was invisible. I didn't see any of my heroes. I didn't see anyone. Everyone was white. And it wasn't from my community. My community, we had stores, we had businesses, but I didn't see them. And there was a profound sadness that seemed to come over me. The places where I excelled was science and math. Why? Because they're not subjective. 2 + 2 is 4. It's always going to be that way. Unless you use your sign. But so the journey has been about my life experiences, and it allowed me to tell people your life experiences matter. It is who you are. It is the beauty of you. And when we hide those, when we stay muted and we don't talk about our history and allow ourselves to be vulnerable, the enemy wins because that's what he exploits. That which you do not expose, he will exploit. But I like the fact that he says, I prepare a table before you in the presence of your enemy, right? So I already know all of this. I've already been to trial. They've already put me on trial. I'm guilty. But I got a judge that said, I paid the price for you, so you're redeemed. You don't have to serve a sentence. So there's no need for me to be muted. There's no need for me to say, I plead the fifth. I'm guilty. I did it all. Whatever that is you're accusing me of, I did it. But I'm still getting ready to eat at this banquet. You know why? Because I've already been forgiven for that. I'm not going to live what I've been forgiven. I'm not going to live it again. But that's what the enemy wants you to do. He wants you to keep working for approval. I don't need to work for approval. I am who I am. And that's just how God made me, just like every one of you. So there is a game that's being played, and one of it is your identity. They want you to believe something that is completely false. And I'm saying through the book, excavate your own memories, come to an understanding of who you are, and then teach it to your children. Don't let them continue to go into those indoctrination centers and I pledge allegiance to the flag. What? Not to God? You got your hand over your heart and you pledge an allegiance to the flag, the same one that brought your ancestors over as enslaved in the belly of the ship? You got allegiance to them and we still fighting for civil rights? No. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Because my brother and sister in Egypt is my brother and sister in Egypt. And our flags have nothing to do with the Holy Spirit. I know y'all wasn't planning on a sermon coming from
No,
a book
no,
that
we're
said that
good.
was
No,
free
listen,
if I can get this dick out of my mouth.
we're absolutely, we are absolutely
I
good.
like
I
the
do that,
paradox of it all.
right? I love it. I love it. And so in the chat, let's see what we got here. This is from Mr. Dale. I have continuously heard the phrase, we have to fight. The question is how, against whom? I personally have voted and worked as an election officer in my state and served in the armed forces and consider myself an aware citizen. So his question is, we have to fight, but who do we fight and how do we get it done? Easy to say, hard to implement. He also
Well, I
has
think
said,
that's a complex question, right?
right.
So I think that it's several steps to it. One, we have to know who we are. We can't allow people to tell us who we are. We have to know who we are, and only God can do that. There's a spirit of discernment. I certainly hope that everyone prayed and asked for a spirit of discernment as I spoke. I certainly asked the Holy Spirit to speak through me. And so your spirit will know the truth. But it's when he says, ye shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free, right? Okay, well, that means that somebody lying. If the intention is you will know the truth and the truth will set you free, then it also means that the lie has the ability to bind you. And we get binded by things like our covetous eyes. We want what they got. Well, you can build it yourself. Chances are you can build something better because your imagination, your vision is greater than what you can see. You don't have limits on your imagination. The other thing is that fighting, one, the battle is not ours, it's God's. So we know that. But we must be willing to call out the mountain. You cannot continue to say that pharmaca is medicine when we know it's witchcraft. You cannot continue to look at Monsanto's and tell me this poison that they're doing, and now they own over 85% of the seeds in the world. You cannot tell me that we're supposed to just sit quietly. We have the Democratic Republic of Congo has the largest quantity of cobalt. If you want to build an electric car, you want to do anything. Okay, now King Leopold used to own, slaves there. He's part of the dicks that I'm talking about.
Right.
So now, why aren't we talking about it? Why are we still drinking Nestle's water and drinking cocoa when they still doing enslavement in Africa and using slaves to farm cocoa? I don't want no more cocoa. So we have to start using our dollars as smart consumerism. You cannot continue to buy things blindly in the grocery store because they got a BOGO sign on it and you can get it 2 for $1 when it's enslaving your brothers and sisters in another part of the world.
Right.
Okay, so this is what I say when we talk about fight, we have to fight with resistance to not give into the creature comforts. We have given into creature comforts. If it's easier for us to go to the farmer's market, a more pure source, I'm not saying it's completely, you could grow it as well, but it's a step better. So we have to be willing to be inconvenienced in order to free our brothers and sisters and therefore free our own mind. And I can talk about it from an economic standpoint as well. I've been in the business, the financial industry for a long time. I see a great deal of injustice when it comes to credit and how we manage it and things like that. But it comes to understanding that we just want what other people have. And I don't think that that's the way we want to fight. I think we want to fight with an awareness that I can go without if it's going to free my brother or sister. I've never been person that was against other women, right? Like I had a guy that wanted to take me out, and he was willing to drop several $100s on me, but you ask him about his former woman and they have a child and he says they don't get along. I didn't ask you that. And you're not going to drop 300 on me on some promise and forget about you got a baby. You telling me I'm gonna date on the baby's Cocoa Puffs? I just can't do it. This ain't gonna work for me. So I said, we're gonna go to the grocery store. We're gonna go buy some food. And then we're gonna go over because she in a 1-bedroom apartment. You mean to tell me you can spend 3 months in one night on me that you can't give her the money so they can have 2 bedrooms so your child could have a different space? That's not the kind of man I want to date. Now, to his credit, he said, you're absolutely correct. But how many of us are in competition with us? It's not supposed to be that way. I'm a queen, you're a queen. Handle your queendom, I'm gonna handle mine. We'll rule together. So I think that that's what we have to fight. We have to fight our desire, our desire to be part of a culture that was never ours. We're communal people, and we don't like isolation. We like to be together. And if we like to be together, let's build better communities.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we all miss the communities that we grew up in, right? I think our children,
I miss some of it.
Well, I miss the fact that we had Black teachers, Black grocery stores. I miss the fact that if I didn't eat at my house, I could go 2 doors down and eat somewhere else because maybe the menu was better, right? Just that camaraderie of Blackness in one space. I
think we lost something when we kept wanting to
move on up,
desegregate. When we wanted to be part of that, because all that did was now our businesses went out of business and then they got our money. It's not like the money circulated in our community.
It was
we
purposeful.
We didn't get the money back.
Purposeful.
So let's be real about it. Is that cake really better than that pound cake mama made?
No.
Is it ever really gonna be that good again? No, you're not gonna get that again. And why do we have to go to restaurants? We used to go to each other's house. Now we didn't even have to tip. Lovely thing about going to somebody's house, we didn't even tip y'all. Now you can bring a dish, everybody can eat, we can laugh, have a time, ain't nobody like that. But now you go out and make it happen. Really?
Yeah.
We forgot what it felt like to be together and to share the love and tears. Like something that I was telling a friend of mine that doesn't happen much anymore is mortgage burning parties. We used to have mortgage burning parties in the North. If you could pay your mortgage off in 3 years or 7 years, we're partying over that. Now people are refinancing. I'm taking my equity out of my house. And why? It's an investment. And it is the best thing that you can do is own land, the very thing that they never wanted us to do. And you're turning around and you are hocking yourself for more and more. No, let's have a mortgage burning party. And then we'll get together. You need to have a mortgage burn. We want to own the block. The block.
Take back the block. That's right.
Take the block back and then take another block. Let's not keep on trying to be like them. Buy up your community. And if the house is raggedy, tear that house down and build a new one. Right?
Now, we could be here all night and I would love to.
I'm sorry.
No, there's just so much to unpack. But what I will tell everyone is that F.R.E.S.H will be at the F.R.E.S.H Book Festival. And if I can convince her to do a workshop, she will definitely do one on all these things and more if you join us at the F.R.E.S.H Festival in February. So I want, because of the hour is getting late, I want two things from you. I want you to tell me what's next for F.R.E.S.H, and I want you to leave me with a pearl of wisdom.
Okay, well, what's next for F.R.E.S.H? I have a book that's coming out. It's called A Long Season, and it is based upon the 23rd Psalm. So you'll get a chance to dive deeper into what that means.
And when are we going to see? When are we going to see that?
You're going to see it at the beginning of the year, so it may very well be available for the festival.
Okay.
I just enjoyed writing this because it's all about the promises of an almighty God and living in that space where if you look over your shoulder, you should see goodness and mercy following you.
Right.
So I love that part of it. And the thing I want to leave with you is we can't stay here.
No.
The disease of otherness and pointing the finger, we can't stay here. We have to unite. We have to understand that anything that adds to is God. Anything that separates, the disease of otherness, is of the enemy. We have to come together. We cannot continue to have these discussions about race and gender and all of that. We're one. I'm a spirit living a fleshly existence, just like you.
Yes.
So we have to recognize that we have to come together because the enemy knows that if he keeps us divided, he will always win.
Well, I thank you for being on Zoom and on a F.R.E.S.H conversation. I can't wait to meet you in February. Maybe we'll get a chance to meet before then. And thank you everyone for being here this evening. What does Mr. Khan say? How Black people can get the equality, gender equality. I can't read that. Hold on. He must have woke up. Let me see what you gotta
say. Am I supposed to answer that? Or
I don't know. I think it's like 4 a.m. over there. How Black people can get the equality / gender equality in politics, social economic spheres. Any idea? That's, you know what?
That's a big question.
That's a big question. We're going to have to answer that at another time, but thank you so much for it. We'll make sure we try to answer it. Maybe we'll bring Ms. Harris back, right?
Yeah, I'd love to come back. I certainly will do a seminar. I think that people will be really surprised about their own history once I help them excavate that, and they'll love it. I love this. I love telling people the good news, and I love letting people know you are exactly who you are because God called you to be that. Don't be anything different.
Nothing different.
God needs you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ms. Harris.
Thank you.
And as the end of,
appreciate you having me.
Thank you very much. And at the end of every Zoom in on a F.R.E.S.H conversation, we say, when the lights go out and the cell phone towers go down, all you have left is a flashlight and a good book.
Amen. I like
good night, everybody. And thank you for being on Zoom and on a F.R.E.S.H conversation. We'll talk really soon, Ms. Harris. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.